Have you ever just looked at a tattoo and thought, how does that drawing stay on someone's skin for their entire life? Or how this thing that feels so modern is actually ancient? Well, today we're going to peel back the skin literally on the world of tattoos. We're talking deep history and the amazing science that makes them permanent. So here's our game plan. We're going to start our journey thousands of years in the past. Then we'll dive right into the biology that makes tattoos last. After that, we'll get real about the modern risks and, more importantly, how you can stay safe. And finally, we'll explore the deeply personal reasons why people are still so passionate about getting inked today. Okay, first things first, let's get one thing straight. Tattoos are not some new trend. Not even close. This is a practice that is woven into the very fabric of human history, stretching back for thousands of years and touching pretty much every culture on the planet. So just how far back are we talking? Well, to find the oldest actual proof of a human with a tattoo, you have to go back more than 5,000 years. To put that in perspective, that's older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. This isn't just history, it's prehistory. And this is the guy who proves it. Meet Ötzi the Iceman. When he was discovered, perfectly preserved in a glacier, researchers found something incredible. Over 60 tattoos all over his body. Now, these weren't some big, elaborate designs. There were simple lines and crosses. And the thinking is they were tied to ancient beliefs or maybe even some form of early medicine. He is, for all we know, our earliest tattooed ancestor. And you know, that ancient link between tattoos and status, it wasn't just happening in the icy Alps. It has incredibly deep and powerful roots right here in Thailand. For instance, way back in the Ayutthaya period, we have historical records from diplomats noting that tattoos were marks of power, worn by nobles and even the king himself. And later, in the Lana kingdom, these intricate leg tattoos were basically a rite of passage for men, a visual symbol of their courage and their right to lead. And get this. This is fascinating. In the Lana region, your tattoos literally defined who you were in society. You were either a white belly, meaning your tattoos only went up to your thighs, or you were a black belly, with that ink extending all the way up onto your stomach. This wasn't just for looks, it was your identity, right there for everyone to see. So, we know tattoos are ancient, we know they've been important for ages, but how? How do they actually stay in our skin for our entire lives? Well, the answer isn't really about the ink. It's all about an incredible battle that happens just beneath the surface. See, your skin has three main layers. The top one, the epidermis, is constantly shedding old cells and making new ones. If you put ink there, it would just flake away in a matter of weeks. The real secret, the target zone, is that stable middle layer called the dermis. That's where the magic has to happen. So here's how it becomes permanent. First, the tattoo needle pushes those ink particles down into the dermis. Your body immediately detects this as a wound, an intruder. So it launches an immune response, sending in these special cleanup cells called macrophages. These little guys rush in and gobble up the foreign ink particles to get rid of them. But here's the catch. The ink particles are too big for the macrophages to break down. So these cells basically become microscopic prison guards, getting stuck in the dermis while holding on to the ink. Your tattoo is literally a community of tiny ink-filled immune cells, trapped in place forever. The science is pretty incredible, right? But let's get practical for a second. At the end of the day, getting a tattoo means repeatedly breaking the skin with a needle. And that process, well, it opens the door to some real health considerations that we absolutely need to talk about. And I'm not being dramatic. Legally and medically, getting a tattoo is considered a minor surgical procedure. It creates an open wound, which is exactly why the industry is often regulated as an activity that can be hazardous to your health. Just thinking about it that way is the first step to making sure you have a safe experience. Now, while any ink could potentially cause a reaction, a lot of research points to specific pigments being more likely to cause trouble. So if you're thinking about getting a super vibrant tattoo with fiery colors, it's really good to know that bright reds and oranges are the most common culprits when it comes to allergic reactions. So it's crucial to know the full range of risks. Beyond allergies, you've got the danger of skin infections if the studio isn't clean. There's also the chance that your skin could form puffy, raised scar tissue over the design. And of course, the most serious risk of all, the transmission of diseases if needles and other equipment aren't sterile, or even worse, are reused. But look, don't let that scare you off. Millions and millions of people get tattoos safely every single year. The key is just knowing exactly what to look for. So, let's walk through a little safety checklist to make sure you're protected. All right, this is your homework. First, does the studio even have a permit to operate? Check their reviews online. When you go in for a consultation, look around. Is the tattoo area clean? Is it separate from the waiting room? And then, watch the artist. They must put on new gloves for you. They must open a brand new single-use needle from a sealed package right in front of you. And when they're done, that used needle better go straight into a proper biohazard container. Seriously, these things are non-negotiable. And here's a huge pro tip. Be really suspicious of a price that seems way too good to be true, because it probably is. A super low price can be a massive red flag that the studio is cutting corners, maybe using cheap, unregulated, or even illegal inks that could be a serious risk to your health. Trust me, your body is worth the investment. So, after going through the ancient history, the wild science, and the very real risks, we finally get to the big question: why? With everything that's involved, why do people continue to embrace tattoos so passionately? Well, the reasons are just as diverse as the designs themselves. For a lot of people, maybe the biggest group, it's about art and fashion, a way to decorate their body. But for many others, it goes so much deeper. It can be a way to tell a deeply personal story, to mark that you belong to a certain group, to prove to yourself that you can endure the pain. And for a small number, it can even become this compelling habit. And this idea of storytelling is just so powerful. Each tattoo can become a chapter in someone's life, a permanent reminder of a journey, a victory, a loss, a love, a huge transformation. The skin literally becomes a living document of who a person is and where they've been. So what about this idea of being addicted? Well, there's this term, "thitkim," which translates to something like addicted to the needle. And it describes this phenomenon where the whole experience of getting a tattoo, the buzz of the needle, the sensation, the final reveal, it becomes something a person feels compelled to do again and again, collecting art not just for the final picture, but for the act itself. You know, when you think about it, from an ancient hunter preserved in ice to a modern work of art walking down the street, tattoos are this timeless, unbroken thread in the human story. They're symbols of power, records of a life lived, and declarations of who we are. So that really just leaves us with one final thought to ponder. If your body is a canvas, what story would you want it to tell?